Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Sprinkler Spruce-Up workshop. My name is Juan Garcia. I am the Senior Landscape Water Efficiency Specialist with the district. And before we get started, and I'm just happy that everybody is here today. Here we go. Before we get started, I hope you're all super excited to be here because we are, of course, super excited to have you join us. And my name, of course, is Juan Garcia, and I'm part of the water efficiency team here at IRWD. Before we get started, I would like to share a few housekeeping items with you to remember throughout the event. You will notice that your microphones are already muted. This helps us to allow our video presentation to run smoothly and to avoid any distractions. The presentation is being recorded, but the only video that will be shown on the recording is of the speakers, myself, and of course, if any hosts show other participants or hosts come on and present. During the workshop, you will have the opportunity to win one of our awesome water efficiency kits. There will be 3 questions that will come up during the presentation, so please make sure to listen carefully, and we will provide you with instructions on how to send your answers, and every correct answer will be then entered into our random drawing for one of our lovely conservation kits. Also, we'll be sending you an email, which will include a PDF copy of the presentation and a list of our water efficiency kit winners and other information. We usually send that within a week of the presentation. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the event, so definitely stick around for that. We do have staff on here attending, so let's get, I would like you hopefully to get familiarize yourselves with the chat feature. So let's do this. So the best way to do this is to click on the drop down arrow in the chat area of your screen and choose everyone, then submit your questions during the presentation by doing this. It helps our team to ensure your questions are collected and answered properly. If you do have any technical issues going on in the workshop, we do have somebody, we do have a help desk line at 949-453-5656, and an IRWD representative will be available to assist you. So let's test the chat feature by having everybody in attendance type in what community or city you are joining us from, and remember to choose the everyone option when posting your comments. So let's start using that chat feature. And once again, any questions, go ahead and submit it via the chat feature. So let's start seeing where people are from. Great. Great. So if you have any questions, we do have that hotline number where you can join us. So let's get started because we have quite a bit to cover. And sprinkler spruce up. So today it's all geared towards your irrigation system. So some of the items that we're going to be talking about is going to be landscape water need, irrigation system at a glance, the irrigation system components, irrigation improvement and repairs, IRWD incentives and resources. So let's get started with the sprinkler system at a glance. So this is always key, just knowing a little bit about your sprinkler system, how it operates. So what does a sprinkler system do? Basically, we're trying to mimic rainfall. We're trying to get water out in your landscape and make sure your plants receive enough water to keep them happy. And that's always the key, enough water to make sure that they look lively. And we always got to, of course, consider what type of plants we have out there because they all require different amounts of water. So an irrigation system just simply controls the amount of water that gets placed onto your landscape, hopefully by an automatic controller or a clock that you can program. But of course, some people like to water by hand. That actually is the most efficient way to water by hand because you know where the water is going. We're going to be looking at all types of different irrigation system types as far as the components. So let's dive into it. So when you're looking at your watering system or your sprinkler system for your property, it should be watering specific areas. Um, we call this hydrozone. That's a keyword that's coming up on our next slide is hydrozoning. Basically, it's just grouping plants with similar water needs and other requirements together. So when the sprinkler system comes on, it should be watering specifics. For instance, when the sprinkler system comes on to water this lawn area here, it should be just watering that lawn alone. Sometimes we get a mixed system where it's watering lawn and planter beds at the same time. And that's when we start getting into a little bit of inefficiency or just inefficient practices where lawn requires more frequency or more days of irrigation. Planters usually require less, or they typically do when they are moderate water use plants. So everything should be watering specific. If you have fruit trees, it's kind of a different dynamic when it comes to watering as fruit trees, any kind of vegetable gardens, they require water during their season when they are producing, especially when the fruit starts to set. So it is a different, let's say, animal when it comes to watering versus a typical simple landscape. So hydrozoning, I mentioned hydrozoning, and that's just making sure that your landscape or your plant material on the landscape is grouped together with similar water needs. So when things get watered, they get enough water or enough days of watering for those plant types. Water requirements, sun exposure, soil requirements, we take all this into consideration when we're doing hydrozoning or just making sure that everything is grouped together accordingly. When we look at seasonal water need throughout the year, so this is just some weather data from our central weather station that's measuring water loss. When we look at water need for plant material, let's first look at our annual rainfall when we do have rain. We're struggling with that a bit right now, but when we do have rainfall, that's our typical rain pattern throughout the year. When we look at plant water requirements, so this is water need for cool season grass, tall fescue. We do not budget for cool season grass, tall fescue. We budget for warm season grass. You can see there the water need is quite different compared to a tall fescue or we call a cool season lawn. And also for moderate or climate appropriate plants. So these are plants that utilize moderate, meet about half of the water than your typical lawn needs. But this is, as you can see, these little bell curves. This is how our watering practices should be throughout the year. Right now, we are in September. We should be about 30% less of our watering at this time. Even though, yes, it is warm, the days are getting shorter. Plants will start to utilize less water throughout this time. They start to shut themselves down. Not every single one, but most of them as we start getting into the fall season. So our watering should be following this big drop, as you can see here. Now, when it comes to native plants, it is quite different. We have what's called a different bell curve. So native plants are starting to wake up from their summer slumber and will require water during these cooler months, where other, climate appropriate exotic plant material will start to, need to use less. Our natives are waking up and they need that water. And if we don't have the rain, we might have to go out there and provide that water ourselves, either by hand watering or supporting with the sprinkler system. So we are going to be having a workshop about plants. This will be coming up within the next, I believe, the next couple of months when we have other workshops coming down the line. So I will talk about them and join us for those classes. They're great workshops, and so you can start thinking about what we're going to be doing in the landscaping, because right now is actually the time to start our landscape practices. It is the new year right around now. Planting season is just right around the corner. Just a little design map just showing about hydrozoning, making sure that you're grouping your plants together. And these are all specific areas. When your sprinklers come on, hopefully they should be coming on and watering specifics in your landscape. So let's just start looking at the irrigation system components. Now, I don't want to, dive too deep into this, but just kind of an overview of all these bits and pieces that we see in the landscape around our properties. The irrigation system layout, these are just some drawings, some diagrams of sprinkler systems of how how they're designed, how they should be watering. As you can see, all those little circles are coverage, how far those sprinklers are reaching. So we're going to start getting into the next part as far as so the water meter. So typically you have your water meter. The water meter goes into your home. Of course, it's supplying the water for inside your home, but your sprinkler systems are also tied into that main line. And then they tie into that main line, and then they start building your main line that's supplying water. So these little X's are your watering valves, or your stations, as you can call them. And then once again, coming out from those stations, it's watering plant material. So let's take a look at this next diagram, which kind of gives you a little bit more detail. So here we have our nice water meter. Here is there is a shutoff for that meter on this side. We call it the customer shutoff. And then that main line goes onto your property, and then it goes into your home somewhere, where you can see here the water line is coming into your home. Hopefully there is a shutoff valve there before it goes into your home, and also a pressure regulator, as we should have before that water enters our home, just to reduce that pressure that might be high within this line. You want a working pressure right around 65, 70 for that pressure going into your home. Now, like I mentioned earlier, they tee off of that main line and build your irrigation system. Now, um, your irrigation system should have a shutoff valve as well, in case you do need to do any kind of repairs or maintenance on the sprinkler system. You should be able to shut off that water supply that goes to your main line of your sprinkler system. If you do not, just something to consider, something to go look for if you don't. So here's the main line coming in, and then we start getting to our valves. And you can see the valve here with the wiring connected to the controller on the wall. But when that controller sends a signal to turn on that valve, that thing triggers, opens up, and allows the water to flow through it down to the ground and out to your sprinkler system. Very small, simple schematic, but it does get a lot. Sometimes it gets a lot more trickier out in the field when you start looking at all the different manifolds and the lines crossing all over the place. So just a kind of little diagram to show you kind of how the water flows from the meter through the main lines to your home, through the system, and out the sprinkler head. Now here's a great tool that everybody has that can tell you quite a bit by just going out there and simply reading it. Um, so here's just showing the sweep arm, this larger sweep arm, and these flow dials. The main thing I like to use the meter for with sprinkler systems is sometimes when you think you might have a leak or something going on, you can go out to the meter, and just as long as nobody's using any water in the home, the sprinkler system is turned off. You should go out there, and this should be this should be completely still. You shouldn't see any movement in this larger sweep arm or this small little flow dial that we call it, also like a little leak detector. But if you see this spinning, and you see this arm moving around, there could be a potential leak out there, whether it's in your sprinkler system or there could be water use going on in the home. So this is the simple way to go check for any kind of leaks. Make sure all the water is turned off in the sprinkler system in the home. Go out there, take a look at the meter. It should be completely still. Great tool for water management. I mentioned earlier the shutoff valves. You can see the water supply going into the home. There's a shutoff valve there. What you don't see here is a pressure regulator, which I do recommend that you make sure you have and maintain it. And then they tie off going to your sprinkler system. And here's another shutoff valve. So sometimes these shutoff valves could be a valve like this. It could be a ball valve. It could be in the ground in a cover. Just one of those things where it's important to try to figure out if you do have a shutoff valve, know where it's at, and make sure it's operating properly, so in case you do have to shut off the water to your sprinklers to make any kind of repairs. So now after that shutoff valve or that line, we start getting into the valves. Now these valves, you might see them sticking up somewhere around your home, and these are called anti-siphon valves. When they're above the ground, we call them anti-siphon valves. If any of you have valves below ground in boxes, we call our inline valves, you're going to need some kind of backflow protection on that line, just because there is a tendency for a little bit of a back suction. And if you don't have that backflow protection, you could actually be contaminating your water supply. Now, on these valves here, the way the water flows is it comes up here. When this triggers on, goes to that valve, and then it comes right back down. This little piece here, that's the actual anti-siphon part. That's protecting your water supply. So if you ever see your sprinkler system shut off and you see water kind of pouring out of these at the end, that's okay. What's going on is they're just flushing. It's a self-flushing mechanism, and you do want to sometimes see that. There is a rule for these anti-siphon valves as well. They should be at least 6 to 12 inches above the ground or above the highest sprinkler head on that line. There's always these little insulation uh, considerations that have to be applied, or somebody, hopefully when they installed it, they follow these guidelines and installed your sprinkler system correctly. Now, um, go out, check them, make sure that these are working properly, and make sure that these solenoids that are sitting on top of here are not broken or expanded. Over time, sometimes they swell up, especially with moisture. Sometimes getting into that wiring, got to just always check on them. And we're going to talk a lot about checking your sprinklers a little bit later. Here's a little diagram just showing how your valves are wired up. So here's the controller that might be in your garage somewhere. And here's the cable or the wiring bundle that comes from the controller. And the good thing about our residential wiring bundles or residential controllers is they're usually color coded to make it easy. So on this little bundle, you're going to see a white wire always, and you'll see a bunch of different other colors of wiring. That white wire, we call that our common wire, and then we have the other colored wires, our control wiring. So as you can see, it runs from the controller then out to this group of valves here. Now, each valve, it's going to have its own control wire. As you can see here, this would be, let's call this blue one station number 1. This green one is going to be station number 2, and this purple one is station number 3. That little solenoid on top of the valves, there's 2 wires always that come off of it. And the important thing is that one wire goes to the control wire, and then you're left over with another wire. Now, once the control wires are all hooked up to the valves, each one is going to have its own dangling little control wire, which is now going to be hooked up to the white common wire. Now, this white common wire loops all of them together to create a complete circuit. So when the controller sends signal to station number 1 to turn on, it'll send a signal to this will turn on, allow the water to move through and out through the lines. This will shut off, and then the next station and sequence will come on, and so forth. So a simple little schematic on controller wiring. Once again, if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat feature, and we'll make sure to answer them as best as possible. Now, let's start looking at all the other little bits and pieces, right? Spray heads. Most of you might have a lot of these out there, or very few, but still, spray heads are meant for smaller, irregular areas. They can pop up anywhere from 2 to 12 inches high. You do want a nice high pop up to make sure you get that clearance. They spray, their radius of throw can be anywhere from as close as 2 feet to as far as about 15 feet, but they do require an optimum pressure around 15 to 40 psi. Now, I gave you that range, but we'll talk about pressure, how important. So spray heads, your typical standard spray heads wants a pressure around 30 psi. Now, earlier I spoke about having that pressure regulator for your home, and that's important so you to make sure that that pressure is not really high as it goes through your piping inside the home, and you don't blow out any kind of your appliances or anything that might be going on out inside your home. For sprinkler system, it's the same. Sometimes we have that high pressure in that main line, which can cause a lot of inefficiencies in the system. So later we're going to talk about how to regulate that pressure in these spray heads, which you'll be pretty surprised that it's a simple little component, and we can take care of it, and there is a rebate for it. We say they're high precipitation rate. Basically, they just put out water really, really quickly. That's why the run times for spray heads are usually 5, 6, 7 minutes, because they just apply water really, really quick. One thing we do recommend is to practice what we call cycle and soaking, is to have more cycle start times and take those run times and make them really short. That way it applies water, it moves on to the next valve, applies water maybe for another couple minutes and so forth. You allow the system to rest for about a half hour or so in between, and then it comes on again and applies more water. So you're applying the water in cycles, allows the water to filter into the soil, push down more into the root zone, and then you get that next application to push it down further and so forth. So it's just a good little practice, what we call cycle and soaking. So when it comes to spray heads, you can see that. Look at this number. They're around 70 to 75% efficient, brand new right out of the box. So what's happening to the rest of that water? Well, it's evaporating, it's turning into smaller particles, and sometimes it drifts off. So they're not that efficient, but they can be maintained to keep you at this nice standard. Here we have rotors. Now, rotors are the same as those good old impact rotors, the Rainbirds, the ones that make that nice fun sound, the ch-ch-ch-ch. But this is a rotor. It pushes out water. Um, you can see the radius of throw is anywhere from 15 to 100 feet. So these throw out water at a really far distance. They put out a large amount of water, as far as gallons of water. Um, they're called low, we call them low precipitation, but because by them having to throw water out far in a single stream, and they oscillate from left to right or in a full circle. By them doing that, it applies the water at a slower rate. Even though it's pushing out quite a bit of water, it does allow that water to filter into the soil a lot better. They are more efficient. Rotors can be around 80% efficient, if not higher, just the way, due to the nature of the way they are designed. So these are rotors. If you're not familiar, these are bubblers. These allow water to just soak into the ground quickly. If you do have an area that's enclosed that you know the water is not able to run off, and you can irrigate it by flooding it out, why not? You know, it's a simple little piece that you put on top of the stem or nozzle or the on a riser, and you can get that water soaked out to that area quickly. They can be efficient once again if they're not running off into other areas. So the simple bubblers. And then we have drip irrigation. Now, one thing about drip irrigation is that, before we used to use a lot of emitters and spaghetti tubing when installing a simple drip system. The problem sometimes with just installing a drip system using spaghetti tubing and emitters at the end is the flow of those emitters. Are they 2 gallons per hour, 5 gallons per hour? Sometimes it's a little difficult to create a schedule for that type of drip system. A lot of the new drip systems now that are being built with what's called this inline emitter tubing, where the emitters are built into the line, and it's usually spaced anywhere from 12 inches, 18 inches, or every 24 inches on that line. And you start to lay that line out all over your planter areas, kind of in a grid shape. It allows that those dip emitters to apply water directly to the soil in a grid pattern, so you get complete coverage. And it is really, really efficient. You cover it with mulching, you're never going to see that it's there. It does require an optimum pressure right around 20 to 40 psi. So there is a pressure barrier that is needed for that. There's a great rebate for this type of drip irrigation. There's a program called the Spray Head to Drip program. So once again, after this class, in the email that I'm going to send to everybody, I'm going to send you links and information on all of these different programs that we have. So if you have any questions, go ahead, please submit it to the chat feature. But we'll get more into this during the chat feature. So it's once again drip irrigation using inline emitter tubing, and they do make it for actually subsurface applications. And it just takes a little bit of different design style. So wow, that was quite a bit. So let's get to our first giveaway question now. So this is the kit that you can answer questions to win. There is a moisture meter inside the kit, a rain gauge, a hose timer, a hose repair kit, and a hose nozzle. So the first question for today is, what are the two types of irrigation valves that were mentioned earlier? Email your answers by 5 p.m. tomorrow, September 30th, to RightScape at IRWD.com for a chance to win. Now, for every correct answer, that'll be, so that's an extra answer you can be entered into that drawing. So there's going to be a total of 3 questions. Okay, with that, so question number 1, what are the two types of irrigation valves mentioned? Let's move on, everybody. So irrigation improvements, that's what I really wanted to talk about, because there's quite a bit of of new smart technologies and products um, that are being used, and actually there's great rebates for them. So let's take a look at weather-based irrigation controllers. Now, a weather-based timer or irrigation controller, just depending on the type of controller you have, there's some of them are signal based. Some of them have on-site weather sensors that you can install them somewhere on your property, and it starts to take readings and sends that information to your controller. Some older types or some standard controllers have add-on features where you can add on these extra little devices to make them smart. But that's what basically we call smart timers. Now, what's really great about these controllers is it's not so much the older type of controllers or just standard controllers you put in, what time to come on, which days do you want to water, how long do you want to water for, which is great, but it's something that we have to ourselves input and manage. Smart timers actually ask you smart questions such as what's your zip code, where do you live, so it's going to start knowing your geography. It's gonna use weather data to start watering your landscape. It's gonna ask you what type of plants you're watering, such as do you have grass, do you have planters, trees, shrubs. It's gonna ask you a variety of questions that you get to assign to each individual station. It's gonna ask you what kind of soil do you have? Do you have clay soil? Do you have some controllers even ask you if you have a slope? And it's not a tricky thing. Some of them have diagrams to show you, just to guesstimate on how much of a slope you have, and you can actually program that slope feature into that controller. Now, it takes all this information and then it starts to irrigate your landscape for you based on actual weather. If it rains, some of these have the capability of shutting down. Some controllers, like I said, with the add-on pieces, you can add a rain sensor. Even with the standard controller, that's one of the simplest features that you can add to a simple controller. Is just a simple rain sensor. So when it does rain, it'll shut off. Um, Now these controllers, they're great and everything, but one thing that's important, they have to also be managed just like a standard controller. You can go in there and fine tune them for areas that might be getting too much water or too little water. So not just because they're self-adjusting means you can just walk away from them. It does take a little bit of management from our end. So great technology. We have great rebates for these as well. So one thing I'd recommend is you can go to the rebate page. There's a list of all the qualifying models. Make sure you do a little bit of research on which controller might be best for you. There are high efficiency nozzles as well. So these nozzles actually they take that technology we talked about earlier. So like a rotor, so they apply water like a rotor in little streams, but they're meant to go onto your spray bodies. So this is a what we call a rotary spray nozzle. The one thing I like about a lot of these nozzles is you can adjust how far they throw and how close they throw with just one nozzle. For instance, this nozzle here, I believe, can throw anywhere from as close as 8 feet to as far as 15, 17 feet with just one nozzle, just by making the adjustments. Um, all the big boy companies make them, Rainbird, Hunter, Toro, and there's, of course, other companies that are starting to make them as well. The rebate, I believe, is $4 per nozzle. And Joey, correct me if I'm wrong with that, but it's a great rebate for these as well. So just a good way to make your system more efficient. There are other types of high efficiency nozzles available that are on the rotary nozzle spray list. Just got to make sure that if you look for that water sense label. But the Rainbird U series nozzle is also on that list. We have the Rainbird HE Vans, the Toro Precision nozzles, and of course other new brands and types that might be coming up. So once again, we'll send you links to all these programs. Make sure to just do a little research before that and always follow the guidelines for applying for any of these rebates. Now, earlier I mentioned pressure and how important it is to regulate. As of October of 2020, the new state regulations for spray bodies is that they have to have pressure regulation built in. Um, any site can still sell old stock, but anything that's new, that's coming in, has to have pressure regulation. So these bodies are built with a pressure regulator inside of them. And so the good thing is that we are providing a rebate for these bodies. The rebate for the bodies are half the cost of the body. So once again, we'll be sending you information on these. And they make bodies that are set at 30 psi and 40 psi. Standard spray types want 30 pounds of pressure, whereas those rotary nozzles that I spoke about earlier, these guys, they want to have right around 40 psi. So they make these bodies in both 30 and 40 psi and different heights and everything. So um, take a look at them. You do a little research, and if you're thinking about retrofitting or getting new bodies, think about getting a rebate for them. Here's the spray to drip. This is how to convert spray heads into drip irrigation. This is actually what I mentioned earlier about the spray to drip program. So for this, here's the regular standard body. Rainbird makes this spray to drip body all in one. So inside this body, there's a filter, there's a pressure regulator that drops down the pressure to 30 psi with this, and then you just screw all these other little components onto them, and you can start to retrofit an area without having to dig up everything. So once again, there is a rebate for spray to drip conversion. We'll send you information on this as well. Here's a nice little picture. This is actually here at the district. This is an area right in front of the district where you can see, and this is how you're going to design that spray to drip inline emitter tubing. You're just going to lay it out in these rows. They have to be spaced apart based on recommendations from the manufacturer. But you can see here, you can see all the watermarks on where the water is actually being let out. As you can see, once the system is on, you're going to get complete coverage for this entire area. All you have to do is start planting all your plants in between. You're not going to get water sprayed all over the place, and you're going to have a really very efficient working system. And there's other components that you do have that are recommended to be installed when you are doing a retrofit, such as an air vacuum check valve and things like that, where if you are considering installing this, you can always shoot us an email, and I'll be more than happy to help you with any questions you might have. But just a great way to do some conversions if you're out there either considering doing like turf replacement. And that's one thing I did want to also mention. It's not on here, but the turf rebate program just went up to $4 per square foot. So for every square foot of grass that you remove and replace it with a water efficient landscape, you can qualify to receive $4 for every square foot of grass that is removed. Just like any of these programs, make sure that you apply first before beginning any of your projects, because a pre-inspection is going to be required. So for more information, once again, we will be sending you links on all these programs. Okay, wow, that was quite a bit. Let's get on to question number 2. So what does a weather-based irrigation controller do? Um, I spoke quite a number of things that they do. So anything that you remember, anything that caught your ear, make sure just to answer this question by 5 p.m. tomorrow to be entered to win a conservation kit. Okay, well, let's keep going and make sure we have enough time for our Q&A. All right, so managing irrigation issues or managing your sprinkler system. I can't stress this enough, but visually inspecting your irrigation system from time to time is key. When does our sprinkler systems turn on? When do they come on to water our landscapes? Typically in the morning hours when we're asleep and we don't see them operate. So I just recommend, to at least go out there 1 or 2 times a month, go turn on your sprinkler station by station and just do a quick walk around and look for any kind of sprinkler issues you might have, any kind of major geysers, breaks, leaks that you might have out there. You know, and make sure take a note of them and fix them as quick as possible before more water waste occurs. And then also look at your sprinkler system and see do I have any kind of retrofit opportunities out there? Maybe do I want to replace my shrub spray heads with a drip system? That'll be a great retrofit. Or if you have you know areas of the landscape that you want to convert. So there's great programs and opportunities out there by just simply doing a sprinkler check. So maintenance is key when it comes to your sprinkler system. Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. So sprinkler fun, yes, it's fun and everything, but when we start seeing stuff like this is not so much sprinkler fun, but it becomes sprinkler waste. Broken sprinklers. When we measure water moving through sprinklers, we measure in gallons per minute (GPM). So, oh, here's a great picture of when the system is too high. As you can see here, the pressure going through these spray heads is really high, causing this misting, and then you get the water going off into different areas, maybe your cars, your neighbors, the streets where we want to hopefully avoid. So how can you regulate that pressure? Well, with the simple pressure regulating spray bodies. So if that pressure is 50, 60 psi moving through that line, by the time it comes out of these nozzles, it's at the optimum pressure of 30 psi, and the water is going to be distributed uh, accordingly, and you're not going to be pushing out as much water as well. So keep this in mind. Sprinklers use water in gallons per minute. Are the sprinkler heads too low? Maybe you have to need to get a higher pop-up, because this is causing runoff issues because by blocking that water, now it's going to start to run off into the sidewalks and streets. Do I have any missing nozzles or broken bodies? Not only you can see here by having missing nozzles, broken bodies, anywhere from 15 to 20 gallons per minute. Now, if it's a broken line, you could almost double that gallons per minute of water waste that occurs. And if this is turning on at night and you have no clue, this is where you might get a surprise bill of just, high water use. Do you have worn, cracked, or broken sprinkler seals? Very, very common. All these pictures that you're seeing are things that we typically see when we go out and check sprinkler systems when they might need some care for. Do you have to replace seals? Do you have to replace your caps? Now, one thing, all these problems that we're looking at here, you know, uh, there's going to be a solution for some of this. A lot of the solution is, of course, us going out there and repairing. But if you don't have the time or know how to go out there and repair, we're going to talk about something that might be helpful for you. So here we're looking at a spray body, and this little seal there, it's just a rubber seal to prevent debris and everything from going back into the body. But as you know, those sprinkler components sit outside, and the elements over time, maybe you walk on them, maybe the kids drive the bikes on them. I know I like to fix my dad's sprinkler every once in a while. He drives over that corner one, but um, that sprinkler seal, just by simply going out there and replacing it, I mean, you can save quite a bit of water when you do have water gushing out from just these seals. Now, depending on the make and model, some makes and models, like for instance, this one, you have to buy the whole cap, where these other different types, you're just buying the rubber seal that goes inside. So depending on the brand you have out there, um, you have to go out and look for these seals just based on that brand type. Now, of course, you have the big box stores, such as Home Depot and a store where you can buy materials, but I do recommend that you go to a professional irrigation shop, such as um, I believe there's like Hydroscape or Ewing Irrigation or Site One or Imperial. There's many irrigation shops that are not just open for the professionals, but for homeowners as well, where they have a lot of supply and they can hopefully help you with a lot of these issues. Do I have tilted sprinklers? If I see a sprinkler like that, the one thing I do tell myself is I hope it's on a swing joint somewhere below the ground where it's able to be flexible. Because if it was on a riser that's fixed, you're going to get that crack, and then you're going to get water oozing out of these areas. Clogged nozzle, simply by that nozzle going back up and down into the soil, through the soil, back into the body, sometimes debris gets caught in that nozzle, it pulls in grass, dirt, whatever, and you're gonna have to just go in there and unclog it, rise it up, get some new screens and nozzles if you can, or clean what you have and just replace that and fix it. So it does take a little bit of time and elbow grease to go out there. Overspray, so that's a big issue. When you start having that overspray into different areas of the landscape or into sidewalks, this is what we want to prevent. Now, once again, you see all these problems and issues, very, very common with sprinkler systems. You need to go out there and repair them, but sometimes you might lack the know-how or to do this. So we're going to talk about ways that you can go about fixing your sprinklers. Misaligned, arcs, sprinkler heads, just shooting into different areas we might need to adjust. You might have broken lines. If you have broken lines, you have to do a little bit of digging. They do make flexible joints where you don't have, you can make your repairs. You cut the broken areas out. This joint's able to flex in and out so you can make the repair nice and clean. And yeah, there's just simple things that we need to do just to make sure we don't have any water waste out there. Plant interference. How many times you see your sprinklers hit your plants and then bounce off and go into different areas. Things that can be avoided. The main thing is we do want to prevent runoff, because with that runoff, it's picking up pollutants and other materials and going into our storm drains. And, we want to make sure we keep our watershed clean and healthy. Okay, everybody. So now we are at question number 3. So question number 3, what is key when managing sprinkler systems? I think I said that quite a bit of times on that slide when it comes to sprinkler system issues. So what is key when managing your sprinkler system? Make sure to email your answers by 5 p.m. tomorrow to RightScape at IRWD.com. All right, let's keep going as we are at the finish line. So, this was a quick class, as very important topics. In the future, we are going to be having more very detailed workshops that are going to be just on one specific item, such as uh, drip conversion. We're going to be having a workshop coming up this next year on just how to go about doing a drip conversion. And we're going to have workshops on just California native plants, how to go about, to consider California native plants. Throughout the year, we do have workshops from month to month. Sometimes we have workshops. We partner with the UC A&R, with the UCCE Master Gardeners of Orange County, and put on workshops on composting, edible gardening. So be on the lookout for that. So here is one of our great websites, rightscape.com, where you can find information on all our rebate programs, whether they're outdoor programs, and there's still some indoor rebates available for clothes washers and toilets. But we have the turf removal rebate program at $4 per square foot right now. So take advantage of that. You always got to think about, well, how much, how much turf do I have out there? What is considered, usable turf or functional turf? Am I using it for a purpose? If it's just sitting out there and utilizing your water and your time, then consider replacing it with a more beautiful water thrifty landscape. Weather-based irrigation controllers, pressure regulating spray bodies, rotating nozzles, rain barrels and cisterns, soil moisture sensor, drip conversion. I mean, there's tons of programs available for you for rebate. Just remember to make sure you read the terms and conditions before doing anything. Don't take out your grass and then apply. No, you want to make sure that you apply first, take the pictures, submit the measurements, and wait for your pre-inspection. So just follow the guidelines. You'll be in the right place. If to look at great landscaping ideas, we have our rightscaperesources.com website. Here you can look at different garden styles. There is a water calculator on there. You can do plant searches by common name, by botanical names. You can look at different design ideas. It's just a great, great website to get lost in a little bit and look for different materials and plants and so forth. Just great, great website. So here's some of our upcoming events. So next month on Wednesday, October 13th, we're going to be having our Ocean Minded Landscaping Workshop. Oh, I think I put it there twice. I must have missed one. Uh, but we have our Tap Water 101 workshop. And yeah, if you go to rightscape.com and go to events and classes, you'll get a list of all the upcoming workshops. If you have any questions, please email me at ask1@irwd.com and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. And if I don't have the answer, I make sure that I provide some links or some other information for as reference. Okay, so here's some more just general contact numbers. You can, of course, our website, irwd.com, our rightscape.com website, and email and number. Well, it's time for some Q&A. I hope you all enjoyed this presentation. And with that, Mr. Joey, what do you have for me?
Hey Juan. Yeah, we had a lot of questions come in today. Looks like a lot of people are interested and ready to get active.
Right.
So the first question we have is, I have two water inputs, one for my home and one for my landscape. How do I put a filter on my sprinkler main line so all of my sprinkler water is filtered? I would like to just clean one filter instead of cleaning the filters for all of my different drip stations.
Oh, I understand. Now, it is recommended that each drip area has its own um, filter. Yes. Then now they do make a main filter like a Y filter, just like it is for the drip. And so I assume this customer, like you said, Joey, has 2 meters. Is that what I'm thinking, right?
They just say that they have two water inputs, so maybe one for their main irrigation line and one for their home line, not necessarily 2 meters. They didn't
Okay.
specify.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, in the chat they just said 2 meters.
So 2 meters. So you have a dedicated landscape meter now. Now, yes, now you should have what's called a point of connection, where hopefully you have a master valve that's also controlling the water before it goes out into your main line that starts to feed onto your other valves. That's something that you should talk to a professional landscaper about. But if you can, please email me at ask1@irwd.com, and I'll make sure I follow you up with you more about this, because it's a little more detailed information that I need to share with you and consideration. So that would take up quite a bit of time. So email me, ask1@irwd.com, and I'll make sure I will get back to you and to discuss this further.
All right, we got another question here. Can turning on and off the water meter cause any contamination from the irrigation to the house?
Well, it shouldn't. At that meter, you have that customer shut off, and that is for you to be able to do just that, shut off the water supply going to the home. Now, the sprinkler system, if you just have one meter and it's supplying both indoor and outdoor, you know, like I said earlier, you should have anti-siphon valves out there. You should have a shut-off valve out there so you can shut off that water supply on that irrigation main line, so that way you can just isolate that area alone. If you do not have a shut-off valve, then that might be a good thing to consider installing, is that shut-off valve, as it goes, to the entire irrigation line. And hopefully those anti-siphon valves are installed properly so it does protect your water supply. But that's one of the considerations always when it comes to the sprinkler systems. Just remember that it is tied into your line going into your home, your domestic line. So if there is any contamination that goes on, it can potentially get into the home as well. So just make sure that you get maybe get a professional out there just to check everything and make sure that it is installed properly.
Perfect. Just a quick one here. What's the best way to maintain a pressure valve? I think you've mentioned a little bit about spray bodies and regulating
Uh,
consistent pressure, but they're looking for maintenance.
oh, for like the pressure, you're talking like maybe the pressure valve going into the home.
Yes.
One thing is, Joey, you've been doing quite a bit of work with these, Joey. Do you have anything to mention about these?
Yeah, I would say the best thing to do is pick up a hose bib valve reader. You can pick one up at any type of home improvement store. It screws onto your hose bib, and when you turn on the valve for your hose bib, you'll see that consistent water pressure. And you can check that on a weekly basis. And if you see that fluctuating at all, whether it be too low or too high, you may have an issue with the bell-shaped pressure regulator that's on your main supply line.
Mhm. Yeah, that's when you might need to get a plumber involved or a professional involved out there. Yeah, just they should be working properly. If it's too old, sometimes they do start to fail. So yeah, just I would do what Joey just said, but of course, if you see that it's non-operational, then you might need to get a professional out there to just delve more into it and might need to be replaced.
All right, got one here about rotary nozzles. I
Yes.
have rotary nozzles, but they are rated at 8 to 12 feet or so. My front yard is about 6 to 20 feet, so the nozzles overspray in areas. But when I reduce the distance, they stop rotating. I can't find anything for a 4 to 5 foot range. The older spray nozzles missed too much. Do you have any suggestions?
No, but I do I've been going to different uh like different sites, manufacturer sites like K-Rain, Hunter for MP rotators. And I believe they are making models now that are for closer throws. If I recall, there are new models that can shoot as close to 5 feet, and they are rotary nozzles. So I would just, you know, go to the manufacturer website first. Take a look at all of the information that's on there. When you're looking at product, act like a professional landscaper, not a homeowner, because you'll get more information that way. And that way you're able to just see if like I said, I'm pretty sure they're making newer models that spray closer. If not, like I said, email me at Ask Juan, and we can discuss it further. But I believe so.
All right, we have one here about sprinkler issues. Our sprinklers used to shut off as scheduled um, when the time ends over about 2 years ago. One station out of four would not shut off. My husband's checked everything and we've checked through YouTube and we couldn't find any answers. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions for the issue?
I mean, it's quite a bit of troubleshooting, but I mean, it could be the solenoid might not be operating properly. Maybe sometimes it's depending on how old the valve is or how new it is on the valve top. Sometimes there's called like a flow stem or a flow regulator. And that's, sometimes if it's fully opened all the way, it might not, there's a spring inside that might not have enough pressure to push down the diaphragm when the system is supposed to shut off. I mean, it gets a little more tricky. You might just need to install a new valve. The valves might just be too old, where the inside mechanism parts, such as the diaphragm or the spring, or the outlets might be clogged or not working properly. There could be a hole in the diagram depending on the diaphragm. I mean, depending on the type of valves. When you have holes in diaphragms, they might not shut down completely. There could be debris in the line. Sometimes you get what's called a weeping valve. I mean, there's quite a bit to look at when it comes to failing valves. But if you know that the valve is not shutting off, then maybe just consider replacing the valve itself with something newer.
Sounds good. And then this may fall under the same idea is how do I test my irrigation PSI?
Well, they make a component that screws onto if your spray nozzle or your sprinkler nozzle, where you screw it on the stem and you put the nozzle on top of there and it comes with a pressure regulator, and then you turn on your system and it's going to give you what's called dynamic pressure, or what the working pressure is. Um, that's a way of checking the pressure on the lines. You want to maybe check it at the closest spray type close to that valve to get a good reading. If you have rotors, you're going to need a different device. The stuff that we used to carry quite a bit back in the old days, like a pitot tube with a with like a pressure regulator on it, so you can see what the pressure is of that stream coming out. I mean, that's kind of the old school way of doing it. The other way, of course, is to have like a straighter valve on the line, but that just takes too much time and effort, really. Most new valves, when it comes to professional valves, inline valves have one where you can check the pressure on there, but that's really the only way to, as a homeowner, to do it is by trying to find those bits and pieces. If once again, if you're curious about that, go ahead and email me, and I'll try to find a picture of how that device looks like, where you can maybe build your own and go check your pressure. Yeah.
Perfect. We got one more question here, just as time's wrapping up. There's a couple more in here, but I think we can answer them in the email.
Yeah, sure, buddy. I'm going to
Um,
be answering all these questions again. Everything that you typed in, I go through them, I answer them, and you'll get an email with all these answered again and with links and stuff. Yeah.
and just the last one is, how long is the landscape tune-up program running for?
It is a limited program. The funding is limited, so we decided to put it out today for this workshop and to see if there's any interest out there. Because it is a cost share program, so there is a little stake in it by you, the homeowner. So, uh, you know, take advantage of it if you can right now while it's still there, and hopefully we'll be able to help you. Like I said, it's as long as that funding basically lasts. It can go on for a month, it can go on for more than that, or a week. Just depends. I mean, just depending on how many applicants we get. So, yeah.
Thanks, Juan.
Okay. Well, everybody, I would like to thank you once again for joining us for the Sprinkler Spruce-Up workshop. I'd like to thank Melody and Joey for helping me out. Thank you guys always. And if you have any questions, of course, you can email me at askjuan@irwd.com, askjuan@irwd.com, and I'll be able to answer any questions you might have. And you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend, and hopefully you can join us for future workshops. Remember to go to RightScape.com, RightScape.com, and go to our events page, and you'll see all these wonderful classes coming up. Once again, this is being recorded. It will be posted. I believe there's an older version of this presentation on the website right now, but and there's a bunch of other workshops that we've had throughout the year that are recorded. You can go ahead and listen in. So once again, thank you for your time, and hopefully you can join us next month for the next workshop coming up. Great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Joey. Thanks for helping us. Thanks, Melody.